An ergogenic aid is anything that a performer uses to give them either a mental or physical advantage whilst training or competing. It can be something subtle such as clothing or equipment they use, or it can be something significant such as an illegal substance that gives the performer a deemed unfair advantage in their sport. There are both legal and illegal ergogenic aids that are used across sport, and they can all have both positive and negative impacts on the performers that use them. Some ergogenic aids are banned in some sports but legal in others, meaning that performers must be very careful about what aids are legal and illegal in their chosen sports, specifically as the list of banned ergogenic aids can change from time to time as well. There are 5 ergogenic aid categories, and these are pharmaceutical, physiological, mechanical, psychological, and nutritional. All these various categories of ergogenic aids have individual aids where some are beneficial and others hinder the performer. Some of these benefits can be anything from making it easier to gain muscle mass or boosting their blood levels to making the performer more aerodynamic. Some general examples of ergogenic aids are caffeine, compression garments, and acupuncture. The International Olympic Committee are the main organisers of the Olympics and are the ones who decide what is deemed legal and illegal for athletes to use in their sport, whether it be anything from clothing and equipment to even supplements in the Olympics. They will also run drug tests for athletes that go to the Olympics to ensure that there is no cheating going on, since the Olympics is the biggest stage in the world and that people are tested at random, as any of these athletes who attend could be using drugs or any ergogenic aids that they're not allowed to in their sport. However, if a world record is broken, then the athlete is more than likely to be tested, or if an athlete who wins gold, for those 2 cases, they are more than likely to be tested because they don't want the gold medal or world record to be given to the athlete if they have artificially got it. There are both advantages and disadvantages of these, and hence why they do these tests, just to ensure that there's no unfair advantages for any athletes using the aids. They will also have staff members in the call room where the athletes go before their event and get their equipment and clothing checked to make sure that it is allowed in the sport they're competing in. The International Olympic Committee have the staff members put out for the Olympics to make sure that no unfair advantages are being dealt out to certain competitors. UK Sport cover the UK and do various things such as fund UK sporting events, as well as supervising the use of ergogenic aids within the UK of sport, to ensure that there is no cheating going on in sports, to prevent the image of the sport being portrayed as having a dark cloud over the sport. UK Sport also go to various larger events for different sports, such as nationals for athletics, to keep young athletes on the straight and narrow in terms of competing fairly and trying to help them improve their performance as much as possible, whilst trying not to let them go down the path of using illegal ergogenic aids in their sport. They do this because it helps keep the sport clean for the future as much as possible. The national governing bodies of the sports are similar in the way that they also keep an eye on what is happening in terms of ergogenic aids in individual sports. The national governing bodies are the ones that decide what ergogenic aids are prohibited in each sport. For example, in athletics, both British and England athletics decide which ergogenic aids can be used or not used in the sport of athletics in the UK. There will be a national governing body for every sport, but they only cover their sport that they've chosen. So the athletics ones will only decide the ergogenic aids allowed in athletics and not any other sport. Finally, the World Anti-Doping Agency determines what drugs are illegal and legal for each sport. The World Anti-Doping Agency focus on performance-enhancing drugs because they can give performers who utilise those drugs a huge advantage over their competitors. They will also run drug tests on suspicious performers in major competitions to try and keep their sport as clean as possible and not run the risk of having an unfair advantage for the user. The World Anti-Doping Agency also provide education to younger performers to provide them with necessary information to keep them clean and safe in their sport. This is because they're trying to prevent future use of performance-enhancing drugs for the younger athletes currently. The ergogenic aid categories are pharmaceutical, physiological, mechanical, psychological, and nutritional. They all have their own benefits and negatives, and some of them are also illegal in various sports due to their benefits, giving the performer who uses them an unfair advantage over all their opponents who they're against. Firstly, pharmaceutical aids are supplements and things that the performer will consume in one way or another. This category of aid includes a lot of performance-enhancing drugs. Some example of these are anabolic steroids, which increase muscle mass quicker when training and therefore enhance the performance of the athlete. Another example is beta blockers, which completely relax the performer and lowering their heart rate and blood pressure mean they're more relaxed when they compete. These two pharmaceutical aids are both illegal in most, if not all, sports, since they do give a big advantage to the user. However, one example which is legal is caffeine, which you can get from coffee, etc. This can just make you slightly more aware of your surroundings and slightly more energized. Secondly, physiological aids are things that can help the performer physically, such as a massage or an acupuncture, which will relieve muscle tension and help the performers to recover properly and effectively. Also, general medicines can be classed as physiological aids because they can help keep the lungs and airways clear of the performer if they have a cold, for example, meaning that they can go back to training fully as soon as possible without hindering them too much. Next, mechanical aids are things that can assist the performer doing something and enhancing their training methods, for example, a treadmill or timing equipment for runners, allowing them to improve their training ability. They could use the timing equipment for a pyramid training and split the intervals accurately to further improve their ability in their sport. Penultimately, psychological aids are things that improve the mental state of the performer and can prepare them to perform to their best of their ability. Examples of these are relaxation and imagery. These are both important to a performer because relaxation means that they can lower their heart rate to the point where their body is as relaxed as it can be, and then they can reflect on their recent training and competition performances. Imagery is in some way similar in the way that it involves the performer picturing in their head what they're going to do and what they've done and what they must do to improve. It may also include watching videos of model techniques from their event. Finally, nutritional aids are things that, again, the performer can consume in their diet to enhance their performance. A good example of this is carbohydrate loading. This is a commonly used method by long distance runners because carbohydrates are a slow release of energy, meaning that if they are consumed in large amounts, then the runners will be able to expend more energy than a normal day. The performers usually consume the carbohydrates during the week leading up to the event or the night before to give them the best chance of competing to the best of their ability. One method of enhancing the performance of an athlete is to use video recorders. Video recorders are a mechanical aid and are an extremely useful tool for an athlete and their coaching team. Video recorders are used to film the performances of athletes, whether that be in training or in competition. It is often used in training to give the athlete a clear image and different perspective of what they are doing instead of trying to feel what they're trying to do, because it's a lot harder to change something if you cannot see what is wrong in the first place. However, in competition, most of the time, all of the performances done on the day will be filmed because in a competition situation, it is a lot different with the pressure of the competition and the time limit. The performer and their team will then go and review the videos in training and improve and build on their ability from that. There are many athletes who this ergogenic aid would be extremely useful to. However, it is arguably most important to a heptathlete or a decathlete because they have a plethora of events which all involve very different techniques, and it is a lot for the athlete to learn and adapt to in the space of a couple of days. Considering these athletes have to complete 7 events for the heptathlon and 10 events for the decathlon in a couple of days, it's crucial for them to have their performances filmed for review after the competition, as well as use it during the competition to improve their performance in each individual event. It will help them moving on from one event to another, because it will mean that they are able to focus on one event at a time. Example athletes that would use this are Jessica Ennis-Hill when she competed, and Katarina Johnson-Thompson. The main downside, and possibly the only downside to using video recorders, is that they are expensive. However, it is such a useful tool that most athletes would argue it's probably worth it. The main positives of video recorders are that they are an exceptional method to use both in training and competition, as they give a clear image and view for the athlete of themselves, because watching and analysing is much easier than trying to do it by feeling. It also means that the athlete and their team could do a side-by-side comparison with model parts of the technique that they're trying to work on. On the other hand, the main, if not the only negative about video recorders, is that they are expensive. However, if you have a smartphone, then it will usually have the adequate facilities on that to be able to record and analyse, etc. Video recorders are legal in sports. However, there can be restrictions. For example, in athletics, the coach is allowed to record anything they wish to on the performance, as long as they have been given permission by the event organisers to. They are also allowed to show the athlete the video. However, the athlete is not allowed to touch the device and must have their hands behind their back or in the sight of the officials running the event. This is to prevent any bending of the rules and regulations of athletics. It also gives the coach a more influential role on the performance of the athlete. Another mechanical ergogenic aid is weights. Weights are used to make exercises more challenging for the athlete to further improve themselves. A good example is when doing bodyweight squats. Once the athlete has learnt the technique properly and is able to do the exercise safely and is ready for the next step, the coach may want them to add weight to the exercise to make it more challenging for the athlete, and will further improve their strength and power depending on how the exercise is adjusted. There are many athletes who use weights to adapt their exercises to improve themselves. However, it is useful for a heptathlete because they will need the strength for a lot, if not all, their events, meaning that they can improve their overall strength by using weights. Then they will become better all round, because being a heptathlete requires strength in everything they do, as well as power, and adding weights to their session can provide this for them. Weights that are used in gyms can be expensive if you try and get full sets. However, you can get small sets for fairly cheap. If not, water bottles filled up and put in a bag can be used as a weight if necessary, as long as it is some kind of weight and it is usable and functional for the required job. The positives for using weights is that it can improve the strength of athletes and are extremely versatile in training, because they can be used for almost any exercise and basically for anything to make them exercise more challenging themselves. On the negative side, if they are used incorrectly, it can be extremely detrimental and can potentially badly injure the athletes, because as the weight gets heavier, often their technique will drop off and it can cause injuries. Also, if weights are introduced too early in younger athletes, then it can stunt their growth and lead to ongoing injuries such as Oscar Slatus. Weights are definitely allowed to be used in sports and are imperative to some training programs 99% of the time. It is also left to the discretion of the coaches and athlete whether they wish to do it, as it can lead to a lot of injuries as a consequence if done incorrectly.